The clock on my nightstand read 3:17 a.m. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break them. My t-shirt was soaked through with sweat, and the tears wouldn't stop. The vision had just ended, and the silence in my apartment was deafening. For 3 nights, Jesus had been showing me things that have completely undone me. He showed me the ones he calls ready, the ones truly prepared for his return. And I have to tell you, almost none of them were the people we put on stages. Almost none of them were the ones we celebrate. And the most devastating part? He showed me that my own life, this life I've dedicated to portraying him, this life that so many people look to, was built on a foundation of scheduled faith that he couldn't penetrate. He showed me I wasn't ready, not even close. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught about readiness. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. The first night it happened, it was a Tuesday. It had been a long day on set. For those who don't know, my name is Jonathan, and I have the overwhelming privilege and burden of portraying Jesus in the series The Chosen. That day, we had been filming some of the more intense teaching scenes. Hours and hours of me, in the robes and the sandals, speaking his words, looking into the eyes of actors playing the disciples, the Pharisees, the crowds. I got home around 10 p.m., just exhausted. There's a strange kind of exhaustion that comes with that job. It's not just physical from the long hours or the heat. It's spiritual. It's the weight of trying to be a vessel for something so holy. I peeled off my street clothes, took a long shower, and tried to wash the day off of me. Tried to wash him off of me, in a way. Not in a bad way, but just to be Jonathan again. Not Jesus. I'm 51. I've never been married, no kids. My life is quiet. It's this apartment, it's the set, it's my gym, it's my church on Sunday. It's a simple life. And in that quiet, after a day of being surrounded by hundreds of people, the silence can be really loud. I made some tea, sat down on my couch, and just stared at the blank TV screen. And a question, one that I've asked 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways, bubbled up from a place of deep, deep weariness. It wasn't a formal prayer, it was more like a sigh from my soul. I just whispered it into the empty room. Lord, after all of this, am I ready? I mean, really, I say your words, I wear the costume, I study your life more than anyone I know. But if you came back like tonight, I expected silence. I expected the usual, the gentle, affirming feeling that pastors tell you about. The quiet assurance. That's not what happened. Instead, the air in the room changed. It became heavy, thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. It wasn't frightening, not yet. It was substantial. I didn't see anything at first, but I knew, with a certainty that bypassed my brain and went straight to my spirit, that I was no longer alone. He was there, not the version of him I play. This was authority. This was holiness that felt like a physical weight. My heart started to pound. I didn't move. I couldn't. Then, his voice. It wasn't audible, not with my ears. It was inside my head, but it was clearer than any sound I've ever heard. It was gentle, but it had the timbre of creation in it. It was the voice of a king, and it was the voice of a friend who knew me better than I knew myself. Jonathan, you ask if you are ready. Let me show you what readiness looks like. And just like that, my apartment was still there. I could still feel the couch beneath me, the warm mug in my hands. But I was also somewhere else. I was seeing through his eyes. We were standing, unseen, in the corner of a massive, beautiful office. A mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with commentaries and theology books. Through a huge window, I could see the skyline of a major city at night. A man was sitting at the desk. I recognized him immediately. He's a famous pastor, a man whose books I've read, whose sermons I've listened to, a man held up as a pillar of the modern church. He looked tired, just like I had felt. He was leaning over his desk, his head in his hands. He began to pray. Lord, he said, his voice earnest and strong, thank you for this day. Thank you for the thousands of souls we reach through the broadcast. Bless the building fund. Give me wisdom for my sermon on Sunday, Lord. Let it be powerful. Let it be effective. Anoint my words, Father. Use me for your glory. It was a good prayer. It was the kind of prayer I've prayed. It was articulate. It was God-focused. It hit all the right points. He finished, said amen, and sat up, rubbing his eyes. He looked at his planner. It was packed. 7 a.m. prayer, breakfast. 9 a.m. staff meeting. 11 a.m. counseling session. On and on. And then something happened. It was so subtle. I felt a nudge, a gentle, quiet impression in the spirit of the room. It was the Holy Spirit. And the impression was clear. Go to the hospital. Visit Mrs. Gable. She is afraid. The pastor paused. He physically stilled. He looked out the window for a second. I could see the conflict on his face. He knew, he heard it, he knew the prompting. Then he glanced back at his planner. He sighed. He picked up his phone and sent a text. I could read it over his shoulder. Associate Pastor John, can you please check on Eleanor Gable tomorrow? Heard she's having a rough time. Thanks. He put the phone down, took a deep breath, and opened his laptop to work on his sermon. He had checked the box. He had delegated the task. He had managed the prompting. And the grief that I felt from the Lord beside me was so profound it almost brought me to my knees. It was a wave of sorrow, not anger. It was the deepest disappointment. And Jesus spoke to me again, his voice aching with sadness. He has built a great work for me, but he has no time for me. He schedules his service, he plans his prayers, he manages his ministry. He knows the scriptures about the Good Shepherd, but he will not be interrupted by the sheep. He asks me to anoint his plans, but he will not yield to mine. He is a good man, he is a busy man, he is my servant, but he is not ready. His life is a fortress of good intentions that I cannot penetrate. The vision faded. I was back in my apartment. The mug had grown cold in my hands. I was trembling. This man was a giant of the faith, and Jesus said he wasn't ready because he wouldn't allow his schedule to be interrupted. My mind immediately went to my own life. My meticulously scheduled quiet time from 6 to 6:30 a.m., my prayer list, my Bible reading plan. It was all so orderly, so managed. It was a box I checked every day. Time with God. Done. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. I realized my spiritual life was just as managed, just as scheduled, just as impenetrable as that pastor's. I was doing all the right things, but what if I was doing them to keep God in a safe, predictable box, rather than truly letting him have his way with my life? What if my devotion was actually a form of control? The thought was terrifying. But what I was beginning to understand was that this wasn't just about one pastor. It was a symptom of a much deeper disease. The Lord's presence was still with me, quieter now. He knew my thoughts. He felt my fear. Tonight, he said, his voice soft but firm, I have shown you a shepherd who cannot hear my voice in the moment. He hears it, but he files it away for later. Tomorrow, I will show you the flock. I will show you how this disease has spread, and it will break your heart. And with that, the heavy presence in the room lifted. I was alone again, shivering in the silence, the Lord's final words echoing in my soul. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I just sat on my couch, replaying the vision of the pastor, of his scheduled, managed, impenetrable life, and with every replay, I saw more of myself. My own life felt like a series of well-intentioned walls designed to keep chaos out, but maybe they were keeping God out too. The thought was an icy grip on my soul. I was waiting for the sun to rise, dreading the next night, dreading what he promised to show me. The next day on set was a blur. I went through the motions, said the lines, hit my marks, but my heart wasn't in it. I kept looking at the faces of the crew, the other actors, the extras, hundreds of people, many of them devout believers, and all I could think was, are you ready? Am I? What does that even mean anymore? The Lord's words echoed in my mind. Tomorrow, I will show you the flock, and it will break your heart. That night, I didn't even try to go to bed. I just sat in the same chair, a bottle of water in my hand, and waited. I was terrified. Honestly, part of me wanted to run, to just get in my car and drive until I couldn't think anymore. But a deeper part of me, the part that whispered that desperate question in the first place, knew I had to see this through. I had to know. It was 2:48 a.m. when it happened again. The same shift in the atmosphere. The same heavy, holy presence filling my small apartment. I squeezed my eyes shut, my knuckles white as I gripped the water bottle. Jonathan. His voice was softer this time, full of a deep, resonant sorrow. Do not be afraid. What I show you is not to condemn, but to awaken. Look. And I was seeing again. My apartment was a ghost around me as the first scene materialized. We were in a cozy suburban living room. A man, maybe in his late 42nd, was sitting in a recliner, headphones on, a tablet in his lap. I could see what he was watching, a fiery debate between a Christian apologist and an atheist. The man was nodding, a look of intense concentration on his face. He was absorbing every argument, every counterpoint. His coffee table was stacked with books on theology, church history, and apologetics. Then, through the window behind him, I saw his neighbor, an elderly woman, struggling to carry her garbage can down her long driveway. The lid fell off, and a bag of trash spilled onto the pavement. She bent down, her movements slow and pained, trying to clean up the mess. The man in the recliner, the one studying to defend the faith, didn't even look up. He was completely engrossed. A moment later, his wife came into the room. "Honey," she said, "did you see Mrs. Miller next door? It looks like she could use a hand." He held up a finger, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Shh. Just a second, this is the best part." He's about to destroy him with the teleological argument. He was smiling, triumphant. He was winning an argument for God in his headphones while God's image-bearer was struggling 20 yards away. And the Lord's voice beside me was heavy with grief. "He has a great knowledge, O.F. me, but he does not know me. He can defend my existence with his mind, but he will not demonstrate my love with his hands. His faith is a library of information, a collection of correct opinions. But love is not an opinion. Love is a verb. He studies the map, but he refuses to take the journey. He, too, is not ready." My stomach twisted. How many times had I done that? How many times had I been deep in a theology book, feeling so spiritual, while the real world, the world of hurting people that Jesus actually came for, was just outside my window, completely ignored? Before I could even process the conviction, the scene dissolved and reformed. Now we were in the bustling fellowship hall of a megachurch. It was bright, loud, filled with people. My eyes were drawn to a woman in the center of it all. She was a whirlwind of activity. She had a clipboard in one hand, a phone pressed to her ear with her shoulder, and she was pointing with her other hand, directing volunteers for some big event. She was smiling, laughing, clearly in her element. Everyone knew her. She was the super volunteer, the one who made everything happen. I saw her teenage daughter approach her, looking hesitant. "Mom," she said, her voice small, "can I talk to you for a second? It's about school." The woman turned, her smile becoming a little strained. "Honey, not right now, okay? We're behind schedule on the decorations for the women's conference. It's for the Lord's work, you know that. Can it wait?" She didn't even wait for an answer before turning back to a volunteer. "No, the blue tablecloths go on the registration tables, not the food tables." The daughter's face just fell. A curtain of disappointment and resignation came down over her eyes. She turned and walked away, pulling her phone out of her pocket, alone in a room full of 1,000 people. I felt a pain in my own chest, as if I was the one who had been dismissed. And Jesus spoke, and his voice was the sound of a breaking heart. "She is building a ministry in my name, but she is abandoning the ministry I gave her. She is so busy serving the church that she has forgotten to be the church to her own family. She mistakes activity for me with intimacy with me. She will receive praise from many for her service, but the ones I entrusted to her care feel like an interruption. She is a Martha, busy with many things, but she has forgotten the one thing that is needed. She is not ready." I couldn't breathe. I saw my own life, not with a family, but with friends I'd put off, calls I hadn't returned, people I'd meant to check in on, all because I was busy. Busy with the show, busy with ministry-related things, busy preparing to be a vessel for God, while ignoring the actual opportunities to be one. The horror was beginning to build, a nauseating wave. This wasn't about a few people, this was a pattern, a sickness. The scene shifted one last time. We were in a sleek corporate boardroom. A man in an expensive suit stood at the head of the table. I recognized him too. He was a major donor to countless Christian causes, a man celebrated for his generosity. He was on the phone, his voice sharp and cold. I don't care what his excuse is, he barked into the phone. He missed the deadline. Enforce the penalty clause. No exceptions. No, that's not my problem. Make it happen. He hung up, his face a mask of ruthless efficiency. He then turned to a man beside him and smiled, the coldness vanishing instantly. Now, about that missions project in Uganda, I'm thinking of doubling my pledge this year. The Lord has been so good to me. And the Lord's voice was like a quiet thunderclap in my soul. He believes his tithe can sanctify his tyranny. He compartmentalizes his life. He offers me his Sunday and the first 10% of his wallet, but he gives the rest of his week and the rest of his heart to mammon. He does not understand. I don't want his money. I want his mercy. I want his integrity. I want his heart. He buys righteousness on Sunday to cover his ruthlessness on Monday. He is using me as a fire insurance policy for a life lived for himself. He is not ready. The vision ended. I was back in my chair, the water bottle crushed in my hand, and I just broke. The tears that had been threatening all night came in a flood. I slid out of the chair and onto the floor, my body shaking with sobs. It was a sound of pure devastation, because in every single one of those visions, I saw myself. I saw my pride in my biblical knowledge, just like the man in the recliner. I saw my busyness, my focus on the work over the people, just like the woman in the church hall. I saw my compartmentalization, the way I could be spiritual Jonathan, and then just Jonathan, the guy who gets annoyed in traffic, the guy who is impatient with a slow cashier. They weren't bad people. That was the terrifying part. They were good people. They were church-going, Bible-believing, God-fearing people. They were the pillars of their communities. They were us. They were me, and we were not ready. I lay there on the floor, weeping for I don't know how long. The horror of it all was just overwhelming. We had built a version of Christianity that Jesus himself didn't recognize. A Christianity of knowledge without love, service without intimacy, and generosity without justice. Finally, my sobs quieted. In the exhaustion and the emptiness, I whispered into the carpet. Then, who, Lord? Who is ready? If these people aren't ready, then who is? Is anyone? The presence of the Lord, which had been a sorrowful weight, now felt different. It was still holy, still powerful, but there was a new quality to it, a firmness, a sense of purpose. The ones who are ready are not the ones you expect, he said, his voice cutting through my despair. They are hidden. They are the ones who have learned the secret of the interrupted life. They are not building fortresses. They are living as tents, ready to move at my command. Tomorrow night, Jonathan, I will show you the test. The one simple test that separates the ready from the unready, and you will see for yourself who passes. Of course. Here is part 3. The third night was different. The terror was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out emptiness. I had been stripped bare. The pride I had in my work, in my discipline, in my knowledge, it had all been exposed as a carefully constructed facade, a spiritual fortress, designed to keep me safe, but one that had also kept my king at arm's length. I didn't sit in my chair this time. I knelt on the floor beside my bed, my hands open on my lap. I wasn't waiting for a vision. I was waiting for a verdict. I whispered into the silence, "Okay, Lord, I'm not ready. I see it. I'm broken. Show me. Show me what I'm supposed to be. Show me who is ready." The change in the room was almost immediate, but it wasn't the heavy, sorrowful presence of the nights before. This time it felt light, not less powerful, but filled with a quiet, profound joy. It was the feeling of a proud father, Jonathan. His voice was warm, filled with an affection that undid me all over again, but in a different way. The tears that came now weren't of devastation, but of relief. "You have asked with a broken heart. That is the only place I can begin. Now, see the ones who are ready. See the test." The vision opened, and we were in a small, cluttered apartment. It was morning. The chaos was palpable. A young single mother, maybe 25, was trying to get 2 small children dressed and fed. One was crying, the other had spilled cereal all over the floor. The woman looked exhausted, her hair thrown up in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. I could feel her stress. She was going to be late for her job at a diner, a job she couldn't afford to lose. She finally got the kids into their coats, her own coat half on, and was rushing them toward the door when she glanced at the small TV in the corner. A local news report was on. A fire had destroyed a family's home in a nearby town the night before. The camera panned across the blackened shell of the house, a reporter mentioning that the family had lost everything, and then I felt it, the same gentle nudge of the Holy Spirit I'd felt in the pastor's office. But this time it wasn't a suggestion to be delegated. It was an invitation. Pray for them, now, and give what you have. The woman stopped. Her hand was on the doorknob. She was already 10 minutes late. I could feel her internal battle, the panic of the clock, the pressure of her boss, the needs of her own children. Every rational thought screamed, "Go! You can pray in the car. You have nothing to give." But she didn't. She took a deep breath, turned around, and knelt on the floor, right there by the front door. She pulled her 2 small children close. "Okay, guys," she said, her voice soft. "We need to stop for a minute. There's a family that's really, really sad right now. They lost their house. We need to ask Jesus to help them." And right there, amidst the spilled cereal and the morning chaos, she prayed a simple, heartfelt prayer. When she was done, she stood up, walked over to her purse, and took out her wallet. I saw what was inside: a few crumpled dollar bills and a single $20 bill. I knew, with the certainty of the vision, that the 20 was for her groceries for the rest of the week. Without hesitating, she pulled it out, found a crumpled envelope, and wrote, "For the family from the fire," on it. She told her son she'd drop it at the fire station on the way to daycare. She would figure out groceries later. And the joy that erupted from the Lord beside me was like the sun breaking through the clouds. It was radiant. "Do you see?" he said, his voice ringing with delight. "She has no title, she has no platform. Her theology is simple, her life is a constant struggle, but her heart is completely mine." She heard my whisper and treated it as a command. She did not schedule me into her day. She allowed me to rewrite it. Her gift, which is nothing to the world, is everything to me, because it cost her everything. Her life is not a fortress. It is a tent, ready to be moved at a moment's notice. She is ready. The scene faded and was replaced by another. We were in a hospital, not in a patient's room, but in the long, sterile hallway of the oncology ward. It was late. An old man, a janitor, was pushing a bucket, mopping the floors. He moved slowly, methodically. He was invisible. Doctors and nurses walked past him without a glance. He stopped outside a room. Through the small window in the door, he could see a woman sitting in a chair, asleep, her head resting on the edge of her husband's bed. The man in the bed was frail, hooked up to machines. The janitor looked at them, and his face, which had been weary, was suddenly filled with a profound compassion. Again, the nudge, the quiet, unmistakable prompting of the Spirit. Pray for them, for peace that passes understanding, for healing, if it is my will, but most of all for my presence to fill that room. The janitor could have just kept mopping. No one would have known. It wasn't his job. But he stopped. He leaned his mop against the wall, walked quietly to the door, and placed his wrinkled hand on the wood. He didn't say a word out loud, but I could feel his prayer. It was a torrent of intercession. He pleaded for this couple he had never met. He stood guard at their door like a spiritual sentry, warring for them in the heavenlies. He stayed there for 5 minutes, tears tracing paths down his weathered cheeks. Then he wiped his eyes, picked up his mop, and continued down the hall, his work sanctified by a holy interruption. "He will never preach a sermon," Jesus said to me, his voice thick with emotion. "He will never write a book. The world will never know his name. But the foundations of this hospital are held up by his prayers. He does not ask me to bless his work. He looks for where I am working and joins me. He is a true priest. He stands in the gap. He is ready." The vision dissolved, and I was back on the floor of my bedroom, the first light of dawn creeping through my window. I was shaking, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from awe. I finally understood. "The test," I whispered. "The test is the interruption." "Yes," the Lord affirmed, his presence filling my room with peace. "The test is the moment-by-moment choice. When my Spirit prompts you in that instant, who is Lord? Is it your schedule, your plan, your comfort, your reputation? Or is it me, the pastor, the volunteer, the businessman? They love me, but they have placed their plans on the altar and asked me to bless them. The ready ones have placed themselves on the altar. They have no plan but to follow me. Their knowledge, their service, their giving it is not a scheduled event. It is the spontaneous overflow of a yielded heart. The truth of it settled into my bones. It was so simple and so devastatingly profound. All my life I had been trying to build a life for God. He just wanted to live his life through me. I had been trying to perform for him. He just wanted a relationship with me. The weight of my own life, my own schedule came crashing down. The call times, the script memorization, the interviews, the endless demands. I had used them all as an excuse. I was too busy, too tired, too focused on the big work of portraying Jesus to the world to actually obey him in the small hidden moments. I was the pastor. I was the volunteer. I was the apologist. But in that moment, on the floor of my apartment as the sun rose, something shifted. The despair was gone, replaced by a quiet, firm resolve. This wasn't a condemnation. It was an invitation to a completely new way of living. It wasn't about quitting my job or abandoning my life. It was about reorienting my heart. It was about learning to listen for the whisper of the Spirit in the middle of the chaos. It was about cultivating a willingness to be interrupted. Later that day, I was on my way to the studio, running late, going over my lines in my head. My phone rang. It was an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. My first instinct, my trained instinct, was to silence the call. I'll call him back this weekend, I thought. I'm too busy right now. And then I remembered. The single mom, the janitor, the test. My heart pounded. This was it. A small, simple test. I pulled my car over to the side of the road, the traffic whizzing past me. I took a breath, and I answered the phone. "Hey," I said. "It's so good to hear from you. How are you? I mean, really, how are you?" We talked for 20 minutes. He was going through a hard time. He just needed someone to listen. It was a holy interruption. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I might, just might, be on the path to being ready. So I'm sharing this with you, not as someone who has it all figured out, but as someone who is just beginning. I am learning to live the interrupted life. I am learning that readiness isn't a status you achieve, it's a posture you maintain, a posture of surrender. The question for all of us, the one that has been haunting me and now, I hope, is challenging you is this. Is your life a fortress or a tent? Do you ask God to bless your plans, or do you wake up every morning and ask to be a part of His? The test comes for all of us, every single day, in the checkout line, in traffic, when your child interrupts you, when that thought of someone you need to call pops into your head. In that moment, who is Lord? If this has awakened something in you, if you feel that call to move from a scheduled faith to a surrendered life, then I want you to do one thing. Right now, I want you to pray this with me. Just say, "Lord Jesus, forgive me for making my life a fortress. Today I choose to make it a tent. I give you permission to interrupt me. I give you my plans. I want yours instead. Teach me to listen. Teach me to obey. Make me ready." If you prayed that, let me know in the comments. I want to know I'm not on this new journey alone. Subscribe, and let's learn how to live this interrupted life together, because He is coming, and we need to be ready